to record, and I will add myself and Jenny.
Thank you. Thanks for showing the video, Francie. Jenny, thank you for coming and being willing to talk with us, ask some questions.
So honored to be here and to interview you about Jinx and Heavenly Calling. It's just an amazing book. I loved hearing it read aloud. That was really a treat. We have a lot to talk about. I would be getting to issues of process, craft, and practice. But first, I really want to know what it was like for you to hold the letters for the first time, the letters from your mother to your father before you were born. What went through your heart and your mind?
I think that I was stunned. I was shocked and stunned. I had no idea. To me, it's stunning how close to just being lost an archive like this could be. And yet, my mother, her last years were not easy for her. She had a couple of issues going on that made it really hard. And so I'd say the last 10 years were so stressful with her life that to be back at the beginning was, it was very healing, actually. It was like, oh my gosh. And I also felt like, wow, and so some truth I'm gonna find out some things I have never known.
That's really great. I can only imagine what that was like. So now it's nice to hear what it was like. My next question, I'm wondering if there are any layers that you peeled away from the text that retained a meaning for you as a subtext, something that you erased that kept a ghostly kind of presence in the finished work.
I think everything.
Yeah.
Everything kept a ghostly presence in a way. I think, Jenny, it's a really interesting question. I think it connects with what Eileen was bringing up about Mary Ruefle and the idea of archaeology. I say that I took them out of context. In a certain sense, I did. But by taking them out of context, so I'm thinking about the bowling. What happened to the bowling? Wasn't it in that bowling?
No, it's not in the bowling. It's not in this video, but when we compile the longer version of, I did about 12 poems. We picked, I think, 3 for this, but we can publish that longer one. But yeah, go and talk about bowling.
Well, there are these series of numbers that I felt compelled to erase into the letter, and they're random. And every time I shared this particular poem with people, they say, what the hell are these string of numbers? And they were bowling scores. She had been writing to my father about her, like 80, 81. What is the line, Franny? You can say it.
80, 81. Oh, 76, 86.
So that's an example of always a ghostly presence, because she was giving him his bowling scores. Well, who would care? But, for years when I was a teenager, they bowled in a bowling league, every week. And so I knew that bowling was one of the things that they held on to, that they did together. That one of those things that they were mutually attracted to in each other, one of those activities. So always, I think I unconsciously selected the things a lot of the times that I recognized as part of the lasting relationship, whether it was a conflict or something pleasant.
That's great. I love that bowling scores were a ghostly presence in the finished product. That's really great. So do you want to talk about palimpsest and how that appears in your work?
Yes. How to even think about conceiving of bringing out the richness of her words selected by me without a connection to the original letter. The background was for me creating the visual. What I did was I erased the words first. I put together the idea of what the poem was. But then, and I put that into the document. And then I went back to the letter to look at what were the visual element, what visual element would add a layer of complexity and delight and visual interest. So that's what I did. I did it as two separate processes, but I never had just the words. As I brought them weekly to our workshop, and I don't think I ever brought just the words or just the visual. They were always, to me, combined. They made the whole thing. So if there was a tear in the envelope, perhaps in the visual envelope, that to me was an important part of it. So I think unconsciously, I was just really always choosing for each of these elements to become a whole emotional piece.
So you talk about poaching a portion of your mother's love letters. And one meaning of the word implies that it's something unlawful almost, or trespassing, something taken. And then there's the other meaning where someone is in the kitchen with some delicious food, steaming it. So are both these meanings applying to your work, or would you select one? And how do you feel about those implications?
Such a great question, Jenny. Absolutely both. Absolutely both. I did wrestle with the sense of I was doing some mischief, or I was doing something forbidden, or what right did I have? I mean, I have sisters and brothers, and my parents aren't here. Who do letters belong to? I don't know. I happen to have them here at my house. So for the moment, they're in my possession, but they don't belong to me. Right. But I did feel it was both those elements, that I had a right to it and I didn't have any right to do it. And I wrestled with that a little bit, and I decided that I'm a writer, I'm a poet. And so that's what I do. And so I decided to take the risk and go forth with that. And I'm really, really glad I did, because to me, it is a deeper relationship that I have today with my mother than I could ever imagine having without having done this process. And so it's been profoundly enriching for me. And would my mother want that? I think maybe she would. I mean, I think it'll be, if I could ask her, but if she probably wouldn't have liked the idea and wouldn't have maybe told me to do it. I don't think she would have given me permission. Maybe she would have. She probably would have been a little bit embarrassed or felt trespassed upon, but she's not here anymore, and they're in my hands. And so I decided to do it. And I'm personally really glad I did, because I'm dreaming of her all the time. And the dreams I'm having are really different now about her, because I feel like I found a way to have the relationship with her I always wanted. So I don't know if does that answer the question you asked? Yes, I poached, but then again, the process of writing erasure poetry gives us permission to poach and use it as our own. And anybody else looking at the letters would have poached entirely different things.
Yeah, they're very much yours. So this leads right into the next question. You as a family historian, so which version do you think is truer, your version of erasure or the originals? Do you have an opinion about that?
Which is a what? Which is truer?
Or more accurate,
More
or, I mean, it's kind of a, you know, it's gonna be hard to answer, but
I think she was always probably telling the truth in the letters.
Mhm.
And I think I was telling a different truth in the erasures.
If I could just
Go
add
ahead.
something, because I think what I have noticed in getting to read through the whole book is that the letters themselves are so emblematic of their present relationship. And what I feel like you did, Mom, was say, these are the themes that stayed, and these are the themes of the relationship. And so if I'm thinking from a family historian level, me as the granddaughter, I can see in the poems that they really tell the story of their life. And so that's where I feel like she's brought in this sort of extra level.
that's great.
It's just striking me too, let me just jump in for a second. I don't think my mother ever had the opportunity to reread these letters. And that is, I'm just guessing that she didn't, because what I think happened was that I think when my father moved out of where he'd been living in Cambridge, and maybe I don't know exactly, I think they moved into Boston, but I think he gave the letters to his mother. He left him in the basement of the original, the family home. I don't think my mother ever had a chance. I don't think my mother even knew they were there. I didn't think she knew that her mother-in-law saved the letters, because Flora never gave them to my mother. So Flora must have known she had them. She could have given them to my mother at any time.
So if you could have a posthumous conversation with your parents about the letters and the book, what would you say? And what would you ask? And what would you leave out?
I think I do have posthumous conversations with them. I think I mostly say thank you.
Mhm.
I think I say sometimes, I hope you don't mind. I also say, wow, I love who you two were in your romance of that year, and that I also really see how deeply in love you were. And since I saw how deeply in love they weren't a lot of the time, or my perspective of that when they were not getting along or fighting, I think I would just say, yeah, that was a really beautiful romance. And I'm glad I got to see, I'm glad I got to know that part of your life.
Okay. So let's see, we have a few more
And
minutes.
it's really hard to raise a writer, right? That's tough luck, My father encouraged me more than anyone else to be a writer. So I guess you got to figure, what you're getting into when you do that.
And could you speak about how erasure speaks about loss?
It's all about loss. What I think it speaks about is that this was here, something was here that isn't ever going to be lost, even though everything, so many other things are lost. So I think erasure speaks to actually what is possible and what is everlasting in a way. It also speaks to what you don't want to lose. So it says, yes, you have lost a lot, but here, take what isn't lost and shape it. And I do think it's very much like it's nature, it's recycling. It is rain water coming down into the swamp and being evaporated from lakes, and it's what happens when everything goes back organically into nature. It's the recycling of the swamp. I think erasure is a really organic process in a way. I think that's like nature, like cycles of nature. Loss is reformed into something worth keeping in a new way.
Beautiful. And what relationship does the other poetry that you write have to the erasure poetry? Would you say they're similar or different? Do they inform each other, influence each other?
Well, I think what the erasure poems are really pretty darn good at, and what I really focused on, was compression. And how few words can you have to say to make the poem interesting, compelling, and exciting, delightful, maybe even meaningful? How few words can you get away with? Well, I've learned so much about that, about compression. Monday Night Poets, very, very often what you all have commented on is been how it could be tighter, what was unnecessary. And I think that we do that with all poetry, but these poems are different than my other poems because they really are, I feel, image integrated and aren't meant to be separated in some level. So even when Franny is performing them, that's also spectacle. That's also image. That's all, so I think I write my other poems more organically to be, in some ways, maybe more narrative, but they both have the way of really helping you see into every word, making it the most interesting and the most unusual and the most fresh and the most surprising.
Mm-hmm. And you made the choice to not include physical evidence of the erasure. No blackouts, no whiteouts, no scribbling over words. Can you talk about that choice?
Sometimes I copied a scribble from and made it into the visual. Maybe my mother crossed something out, and that was an interesting thing. I sort of would save that. But I think because I wanted them to actually read as units on their own. I wanted the idea of extraction to really be implicit and explicit. And I did try that. I did do it other ways. I did experiment. And it was getting in the way of me expressing entirely what I wanted to express, to have also, when you're erasing and you're using blackout or whiteout, I didn't certainly want to do anything to the original letters. So I was always working from images. And it wasn't as visually interesting to me to do erasure in that traditional way where you would actually see what had been taken away. Also, just from the opportunity, what often this is a 4-page letter that I'm extracting from. So it might be over the course of 4 pages. And it would be really hard to show an erasure original that covers like 4 pages. So I think the idea of extraction really appealed to me and gave me the feeling that I was actually creating my own poem.
I think it probably really contributes to your visual form that you don't have those because we get to see the bringing into one image the backgrounds and the words. So
well, and often, you are seeing a lot of erasure actually. Okay. Let me just give one quick, there actually is, well, let me just give you an example of my dedication page. If I could just take me 1 second. Okay. What how I got this question, me, everything else is erased on the entire page.
Wow.
Just not the me with the question mark. So it may not be, obviously it's not obvious. You can't see what is erased, but that's an erasure. That's an entirety of an erasure.
Mhm. Well, the visual form is really gorgeous. I just want to call that out. It's so beautiful. And I'm curious whether you started with words or backgrounds. I know you kept them faithful to like you took words that came with those backgrounds as part of letters or envelopes, but
Definitely
which did you
started with the
start
word.
with when you were designing? Yeah,
Always the words came first.
okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
And I did it a lot, as Mary Ruffalo talks about, the eyes scanning the page. Like, I think she calls it like picking wildflowers, sort of in a sense. So, just letting the eyes scan the original text, and it's just the words that are going to come out.
Okay. Let's see. So what about the erasure of the father? He's a silence, a shadow figure, and yet he's present. How did you do that?
That has to do with the persona, the direct address of the letters.
Mhm.
That's part of an epistolary kind of poem in the first place, is they're always addressed to someone.
Mhm.
And so there's that level of intimacy. I don't think I disrupted that because there was always that original direct address. But there's always, yeah, so I think he's there because of her original direct address to him. And I kept that persona first person, just
Makes a lot of sense.
also probably too, one more thing, Jenny, one more thing, it had to do with letting him be occasionally in the letter explicitly with an address, like, or
Yes.
if she had written his name on the paper, maybe I thought, well, he belongs in this letter somehow. And so just by using his name, I think occasionally where I found it, if it seemed to belong in the letter, I put it there. But it's so interesting because that question also relates to, that was kind of a role he played in the marriage as well, was that he wasn't there a lot of the time for her. So in the way that perhaps that she wanted him to be. And, it was the 50s, the 60s, it was the man, very traditional gender roles. He goes, it's the father is at work.
Okay. And you mentioned that your work was created exists to create a poetic experience, this erasure. Could you talk a little more about that?
Yes.
Question for you, and then I'll move to Francie.
Yeah, I think it is, to me, what I wanted was something emotional in each poem or something beautiful. And very often it would be the way I had the sort of the beauty meter running in Monday Night Workshop is if somebody, often you, my friends, would comment on maybe that an image was really grabbed you, that it was really beautiful or surprising. That's how I did it. Was wanting it to be these fragmentary words and phrases, ideas and images that would kind of explode, the kind that you look at and it explodes with meaning and beauty if you put it there.
Okay, well, it's been great to find out more. And Francie, first question is, your evocation of the erased moments is so eloquent. How did you find the silence, the fragment, and how did you enact the text that way, erasures? I mean, it's really quite a challenge, I would think.
It was. I'm laughing because my mom asked me to do this project, and at first I'm going, there's no way that we can act out a poem. And I sort of opened up the book to a random page, and my own sort of overwhelm as a non-poet, non-poetry reading of like, what does this mean? How can I decipher? So that was my initial sort of resistance of like, it's just not possible. What I found when I read sort of through each section and started from the beginning at my grandmother's really flirtatious mischief. And at one point, she's making reference sort of to her going out drinking and sort of getting a little sloppy. And I'm thinking, wow, like, okay, there's a story here that I can really connect to. And when I was able to kind of connect to the themes of each section of the book, I was able to land in this is where I'm at emotionally as this character. And that's where the silence really emerged of in those moments where I paused, I could help illustrate the story. An example is in the video to get married, the size of it. You know, she's just in this sort of deep contemplation of not knowing if she wants to get married to this guy, but being aware of there's maybe something happening where she's going to have to get married to him. And maybe she is really still in love with him and she does really want this. So that's where I found that I was able sort of to connect to the theme and then sort of create those visual images in those areas of pauses in the poem.
It's beautiful. And the character of the mother you have brought to life. It's so believable. And I'm wondering, did you know your grandmother?
Yes. So my grandmother died in her 81st year when I was 11. And for most of my childhood, in my early childhood, we lived right down the street from my grandmother. So I would go up the street to get time, eat a popsicle at her house, have Oreos out of the jar. But she was pretty much on the couch the whole day, smoking a cigarette. So I have a lot of visual images of that. Then I have a long period of visual images of my grandmother in a nursing home. And she had a tremendous fondness for me, but I'm one of the youngest grandchildren. So just like my mother says, the surprise of reading these letters, to me, I never saw my grandmother sort of in this joyous delight in life. I saw her in her last phase. And that's why sort of I love the comical and sort of dark nature of a poem my mom read at the beginning. Just a note from Athol Memorial Hospital. Just a note, I'm still alive in my cold, cold bed. That was so like that was something she was saying all the time to me when I would go and visit her, or me and my mother sort of to her children when she was in the nursing home. So that had such a sad nature to it in her, life that I got to see her, but to see her kind of trying to test, are you going to come and visit me in this hospital? I'm sitting here and you're off in Cambridge studying. Come and see me. I'm going to test to see if you're going to come, as my boyfriend, as my partner. So I'm able to also look at her in this sort of loving way now, and also to have a little humor about the last part of her life that felt so dark, but I think still kind of is remnant of some of maybe the sort of longing she was having for people to give her attention.
That's amazing. Did you feel like you were doing a third text, erasing the erasure?
I think at times, I think my mother does a great job of illustrating the themes in it. However, I think the third layer would come in just knowing my grandmother. So lake we spent summers at this lake. I know how dearly she loved this lake. She wanted to be there all the time. And they went on their honeymoon to this lake. Um, so for me, the third layer was in that poem. I'm really looking at Laurel Lake as an actor. I'm really visualizing. I'm there on the beach, right outside her cabin, just looking at the water. So that's maybe the only third layer that I can really find is when I actually really imagine the things that were there in that present moment of the letter.
Mm. Just one more question for you. And how do you understand your role as an intergenerational conversationalist? Is it going to go on? Are you going to have your daughter in the future erase your performance?
Oh, geez. I mean, yeah, I wonder what the next generation down would be doing, circus performing or no.
You're not allowed to erase my letters.
Yeah, I'll erase the poems of these ones and make my own poems. Um, well,
Of course you are.
I think one, I feel tremendously grateful in this phase of my life for my mom to have offered for me to do this project because I imagine my grandmother was in her 20s, which I'm in now, when she wrote these letters. And
You're
so,
her age exactly now. Yeah.
so she was my age exactly. So I feel like she's like in my soul a little bit more. In her liveliness is in me. So I'm feeling such a stronger thread to my grandmother. I got more time with my grandfather, Dusty, my mom's dad. His story, his life story was very compelling. And so I think for a lot of members of our family, we just all were drawn to my grandfather, Dusty. Now I feel so drawn to my grandmother and feel like she had this gift of this very quiet story that was hiding in the basement for us all to find out and get the respect that she really deserves around the love and the passion she has and she had for life. So that's something that I feel is the intergenerational thread that I'm really glad my mom brought to me. And I think the gift that it gives for whatever next generation comes is the reminder that like I don't think she would have wanted these stories out, but maybe that's part of the cultural sort of where America was at the time, sort of the taboo of their whole relationship. And now that's something that's more acceptable. And so just having the gift of also whatever story is passed down to the next generation of sort of the freedom, as women, how can we really sort of live life and be ourselves and not feel shamed down into the taboo of what's going around us?
Absolutely. Well, thank you both. This was such a treat to talk to you and go deeper into this.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
I feel very lucky to have gotten to listen to it with being on screen, Jenny. Your questions are so profound. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Kelly, on this amazing accomplishment, and wonderful to hear Jenny and to see and hear Francie. I want to thank everyone again for coming out to Lily Poetry Review's launch of Jinx and Heavenly Calling. I think now would be a good time for us to unmute and congratulate Jenny on this wonderful book. And we know it's a little past 2 o'clock, but we're really grateful that you all stayed for this magnificent experience. And if needed, we could, a little past 3 o'clock, I should say, we can, if anybody has a question, we could accept maybe one question from the audience. I can't see. I see a hand raised. Susan?
Yes, Kelly and I were in a workshop briefly together that I wanted to know if you ever do this again with some other texts. It's just
Will I ever do it again with other
yes.
texts?
Yeah, would you ever?
I'm definitely seriously considering it, Susan, because I have two other letter collections that are really super dear to me that are just they're archives, they're letter collections of an old boyfriend who died very young, and then also my grandmother saved every letter my father ever wrote, so to her until a certain age. So I have the archives there. So I may. Thank you for asking, Susan. It's good to see you.
Thank you all. And this will close our meeting, and thank you so much, Kelly. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. And thank you all, friends, for being here. I appreciate that so much. Jenny, thank you so much. And Francie, of course, thank you.